Now, last semester, the ETC built a game called Rumble Blocks. And this semester, we wanted to measure how much kids were learning from the game. We also wanted to create a new game and measure learning in that game as well. Let's take a look now at Rumble Blocks. The first thing we wanted to do was identify what learning objectives we wanted to measure. We created levels for each one of these objectives in the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, so that any difference in performance could be attributed to the game itself. So to see whether kids could identify stable structures, the team last semester had built levels in which they have to choose which structure is more stable. This semester, we redesigned those levels so as to match the actual stability principles that were covered in the game, as well as match the aesthetic style of the game. To see whether kids could identify which individual blocks are critical to the structural integrity, we created levels in which they have to remove blocks such that the structure still stays standing. Finally, we created duplicate levels for them at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, where they had to actually construct towers so that we could tell the difference in their performance. We created a data logging system that gathered information not just about these learning objectives, but a ton of other data that we then integrated it into DataShop so that HCI was better able to analyze all of this information that we're getting. Finally, we just needed one more thing. We needed players ages 4 through 9 and dozens of them so that we could get all of that data. I'm happy to say that we not only conducted the first ever formal learning evaluation at the ETC, but it was also one of the largest live sessions with over 230 players. Let's take a look now at some of the results that we got. Here you can see the accuracy that kids have in identifying stable structures. You can see that it's a very difficult challenge for them, with kindergartners getting less than 50% of them right before playing the game. After playing the game, you can see that there's a huge increase in accuracy, not just in kindergarten, but all throughout first, second, and third grade. You can also see that the time it takes for them to build stable structures decreases after playing the game, as shown in the red bars. Another thing we noted that was very interesting was that all these levels that we were adding merely to measure whether kids were learning actually contributed to their learning. So kids that did the contrasting case levels were 25% better at the block removal levels, which was really exciting. And despite all of this testing that we were doing, because we integrated it all within the game, the kids still seemed to enjoy their experience. So to talk about the new game that we built is Chanda.
Let's start with the demo of Beanstalk. Beanstalk is a game designed to teach kids the levels and concepts of balancing. And the kids achieve this by returning the lost teddy bear to its rightful owner. At the start of the game, we offer a choice to the kids for their characters. All the levels except for the first one are logged in the actual game, but have been unlocked for this presentation. So let's see a brief run-through of the tutorial.
Can you please return my teddy bear to me?
Watch out, lest you fall down and unbalance the beam. See, the beam is tipping. Click on the pod to throw flowers.
So let's skip this and move over to an actual level.
Flowers.
These levels are designed based on a research paper by Robert Siegler, who analyzed various phases that a kid goes through while learning about balance. In the first phase, they learned that mirroring helps in balancing. As you can see, they execute this by watering pots, which grows flowers on the opposite side of the bugs to balance the beanstalk. To get through to reasoning, they need to get 3 questions answered right in a row, and then they are asked a question about their reasoning.
How can we balance this?
So all the answer choices are depicted pictorially and orally because our demographic cannot necessarily read.
Make the weight the same on both sides. Good hypothesis. I wonder if that will always work.
After this, they unlock other levels, which get more and more intricate with the progress.
I can't wait to get my teddy bear back.
So let's move on to a more intricate level. Here in the 4th tier, as you can see, we disable some of the pods so that the kids don't necessarily rely on just mirroring, and they actually grasp the concepts of balancing corresponding to the distance and the weight. We added some objects in the background which respond when clicked on, so as to make the game more appealing and more playful for the kids. We use actual physics in this game, so there's more than one possible solution for a problem. Well, let's move back into the presentation. We got some useful feedback at SOS, which has helped us improve our game significantly. We realized that the tutorial did not clearly state as to what the players were supposed to do. The user interface was a bit confusing to some of our users. We used a mouse and a keyboard as the input, which confused the playtesters. The voiceovers needed revision because sometimes they were perceived as being scary and not clear enough. And the level progression needed to be a bit more evident. So as you saw in the demo, since softs, we have changed the tutorial and made it very understandable. We redesigned the UI and play tested it to make sure it is coherent with the game. We standardized the user input to mouse only. We added transitional scenes in between tiers to show a level progression as the beanstalk grew. And we added voiceovers to reinforce the goal time and again. We added new and clear voiceovers with a friendly female voice, which wasn't scary. And we added some objects in the background which responded when clicked on them so that the kids found it more fun and more appealing. We polished the HCII reasoning portion where we shortened the wait time for the players and we put a timer on the question, so in case a player missed a question, the question would repeat itself. Finally, we designed a logging framework for HCII user testing. We conducted 7 playtests with over 50 students, and we observed that the kids really enjoyed playing our game. They liked the fact that they could click various objects in the game, and the game would actually respond to them. So this is what some of the kids had to say about Beanstalk.
How are you?
A 2-year-old kid, like 4 or 5 years old, this week.
This was reinforced by some written comments that we got from our playtesters. According to Professor Siegler's study, it is shown that a child goes through various levels of understanding about balance. So we adapted a similar structure in our game. We classified our levels into 4 tiers, Tier 1 being the most basic level of understanding, and Tier 4 being the most advanced. A kid would remain in the same tier till he or she got 3 correct situations, and then they would move on to the next level. This showed us the basic level of understanding of a kid based on whichever tier they were in. These are the results that we got from the learning evaluations that we conducted with our playtest, and it showed that many students showed an upgrade in the level of understanding after 14 minutes into the gameplay, which was very significant. So now John will speak about our challenges.
Thank you. Throughout the semester, we had several interesting challenges. One of them was the limited language set of our target demographic. To solve this, we made sure to convey everything through visuals and audio. Another challenge we had was that there was no standard methodology for measuring games. Through our strong partnership with HCII, we were able to take their research and incorporate it into our game smoothly. Another interesting challenge was that the school systems in which we playtested had computers that were actually older than the playtesters themselves. So, to help with this, we acquired an identical machine and a very patient programmer. Even though we have a very expansive set of stakeholders, we are able to take advantage of that by using all the resources available to us from Carnegie Mellon University. Here's what our client has to say. As you can see, he is satisfied with our product and the way that we collaborated with them. In conclusion, Rumbleblocks is a finalist in the Data Awards, and also a member from our team has been invited to speak at the Computer Entertainment Developers Conference on Beanstalk later this year. We'd like to thank everyone for your continued support, and hopefully our product can continue to contribute to the educational community. And with that, we are open for questions.
Yes?
If you guys could go back to the beginning of the semester, what would you have done differently?
So the question was, if we had gone back to the beginning of the semester, what would we have done differently? I think for me, one of the things I would have done is probably maybe outlined who would have a final say on certain design decisions. Since we were working with so many different stakeholders, often there was disagreement even within different groups, certainly, and even within the same group. So that's, I think, something that would have helped tremendously.
With a team this large, how was it difficult to know who was doing what at any given time?
Yes, it was difficult. I think what made it easier for us is the main collaborators were really HCI. And so what we did was we added them to our Gmail chat list. And so we were in contact with them all the time. Every day we would chat with them. We would meet with them probably 3 times a week. Every Friday we would have a weekly meeting. And so that amount of constant collaboration, I think, helped to make sure that we kind of knew what they were doing as well.
David.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
No, moving forward, do you think the framework you set up with Data Shop will work for future games as well? So the other teams don't have to solve that problem again?
Yeah, and that was one of the great things. Once we solved the measurement problem for Rumbleblocks, we were basically able to copy that same data logging structure to Beanstalk relatively easily. Oh, sorry, I can't see.
I'm Vincent Aleden from the Human Computer Interaction Institute, and it was my quote you saw there. So I won't repeat what's in the quote. But I did want to say that it's been a tremendously interesting journey working on this project and figuring out how we can merge instructional design, game design, and actually evaluations of learning. And I look forward to continued intense collaboration and further results too. No question.
One last question.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, the students that didn't reach the developmental stage of being able to balance in a complicated way, were they able to win the game and return the teddy bear?
So the way that we designed it is even if you don't reach the very, very final stage of development, you can still reach the teddy bear because we wanted them to be able to have that sense of accomplishment.
I was confused by the levels of the
Yeah.
graph.
Time for one more?
You said that you conducted the first formal learning user test here at ETC.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were comparing the results from last semester with this semester. Did you do a formal test last semester on the...
So
I'm just curious, if your results then, before and after, if this is the first formal test you did?
yeah, so all of these results we got this semester. And this, to my understanding, was the first formal evaluation study that was done.
And HCI did that, right?
Yeah, we did it in collaboration.
Right.
We worked extensively on everything up here with HCI to make sure that everything that we were designing could be evaluated.
So like, as we said in our semester, we measured rumble blocks for this semester with Beanstalk. So we did the measurement in collaboration with the HCII, and which is why we could log in.
Thanks, team.
Hi everyone, we're Pixel Pushers. I'm Anthony, producer.
Yotam Heimberg, designer.
Dave Faulkner, designer.
Scott, artist and designer.
Romain, programmer.
Dave Bennett, programmer.
Eugene, designer. So, our project is working with the game, we are funded by the MacArthur Foundation in support of workingexamples.org, and our client is Minecraft EDU. Right, so the game that we're working with is called Minecraft. It's a very popular 3D game played by over 5 million people around the world. It's basically a game about exploring, building, creativity. It's practically virtual Legos. Now the version of Minecraft that we're using in particular is called Minecraft EDU. It's basically a wrapper for Minecraft. It comes with a subset of tools that allows teachers to build and run lessons within Minecraft. Now, Minecraft EDU's goals is to provide teachers K through 12 with the means to teach lessons in Minecraft via tools and lessons and whatnot, and to create an online community for Minecraft teachers so that they can share ideas and lessons alike.
So, even though Minecraft EDU at the moment does a lot to support teachers in creating and running lessons, there are still several features that teachers were requesting from Minecraft EDU, and then in turn, Minecraft EDU requested to us to make. And so currently one of the problems is that teachers have a really hard time understanding what students are actually doing in the world while the lesson is running. It can be very chaotic, especially in larger classes. So we were tasked with creating two things. The first is the lesson review tool. And now what this does is it allows teachers to open previously run lessons in Minecraft. Previously run lessons in a program outside of Minecraft, and then basically allows them to fly around the world and look at students' work, so see what students have built and destroyed. What's unique about this program is on the left here, we have a list of every student that participated in the lesson. And if I were to click on one of the students, it would highlight some of their blocks. So in this example right here, this is actually a tower challenge that we ran with high schoolers during one of our playtests. And the goal was to collaborate and build a tower in 15 minutes. So if I were to click on, say, Eric's name, we could see here that all the blocks that he built are in yellow. And so for every student that I click on, I can see each of their contributions to this structure. And this lets teachers know just how much students are actually participating and doing in the game. So another part of this is a stat readout. And basically it allows teachers to see numerically how many blocks students have placed and destroyed sorted by type. So in this case, Lily placed a whole bunch of blocks and actually destroyed very little. So we can assume that she built a huge part of this tower. And this is actually confirmed. If we go back to this slide, we can see all of the blocks that she placed right here. So we know that Lily actually participated in this event. So the other thing that teachers wanted to be able to do was give quizzes to students in-game. So we gave them the ability to do that. And we did that through the quiz block. And basically, it's a block in-game that teachers can place and students can click on to give and receive quizzes. And to kind of give you an idea of how this works, I'll just walk you through it right now. So as a teacher, I'd walk up and place the cube in the space. And by right-clicking on it, I bring up an interface asking whether or not I want to make a new quiz from scratch or load a previously saved quiz that I wrote earlier for another lesson. So assuming I want to make a new one, I click the Create New button and I enter the question here. And after entering the question, I can choose the question type, so there's multiple choice, fill in the blank, or true false. And fill in the blank is kind of like a short answer essay question that you can submit to this quiz. So assuming we choose multiple choice, we then go to this next screen that allows the teacher to fill in which answers they want to appear for the question. And then afterwards, we have the teacher select which question should be the right answer so the student can get feedback in-game. So now, as a student, if I were to walk up to this quiz block after it's been made, rather than being flooded with those screens, I will simply be asked the question. And so, after selecting my answer and submitting it, I will be presented on screen with either you got it right, congratulations, or it'll tell me I got it wrong. In either case, the answer that the student submits will be saved and then can be read later in the review tool. So, with both of these, the teacher now has a better understanding and a better ability to look at previously run lessons and see what students were actually doing. So in the case of the review tool, like I mentioned, it allows teachers to actually physically see the world and what students built in it. So this is really useful for kind of more open-ended kind of construction and exploration-based lessons. Whereas the quiz block allows teachers to kind of evaluate how students are doing with just straight-up questions. So they can find out how the students are doing, whether or not they're getting the questions right. And this is actually really useful for more kind of structured and straightforward lessons. In either case, they're both really useful, and we're happy to say that the quiz block is completely done, and the review tool has all of its core features complete. And both will be being handed off to Minecraft EDU for future improvement, and they will include it in a future version of the software.
So at the beginning of the semester, Pixel Pushers had 2 programmers, 5 designers, and no prior experience working with an external client project. So while Minecraft EDU was unsure what to do with the rest of our team, we were also unsure where to draw that line between student initiative and client authority. So that we weren't spinning our wheels, we went ahead and tested with teachers because Minecraft EDU is targeting their software towards teachers. And from that, we actually redesigned the Minecraft EDU launcher UI to address some of the problems that we observed during playtesting. However, at quarters, when we presented this, faculty was still concerned about our future direction. We didn't really have any clear milestones going forward. And they advised us to follow our passion and design lessons for playtesting with students. We felt that this was especially appropriate since we were funded by the MacArthur Foundation in support of Working Examples, and these organizations would be more interested in this more research-oriented deliverable. So we started by looking at the Common Core state standards, as well as previous examples of Minecraft being used in the classroom, to look especially at subjects that we thought would lend themselves well to being taught within Minecraft, as well as negative examples of subjects that might not be taught so well within Minecraft, and use that as a jumping off point for our own lessons. So by halves, we had constructed our initial battery of lessons, playtested them internally, and were ready to take them out to playtest with students. But at halves, the faculty had 2 main questions. Why did we choose these subjects? The answer being that these were subjects we felt we were qualified to teach and that might lend themselves well to Minecraft. But the other important question was, why did we choose the Common Core state standards? Because it has holes. While it's great for things like math and English, it sort of falls apart when you look at social studies and science. Luckily, our research was about to take a turn in a new direction and we'd be moving away from CCSS. So over the course of the semester, we conducted 8 student playtests with students ranging from 6th to 11th grade with classes of about 20 people apiece. And as we looked at it, we realized we were asking the wrong question. The more compelling and valuable question to answer was not what can Minecraft teach, but how can Minecraft teach? This had been hinted at in our previous research when we looked at creative writing, for instance. Minecraft lacks an in-depth text interface, and at first we thought it wasn't a good fit. But in this example, a 5th and 6th grade teacher had actually set up a basic framework where his class was a group of shipwreck survivors on a desert island, and he just had them play the game. But after the fact, he had them write a creative journal about their characters' experiences in the game world. And and it really succeeded in engaging the students. So our biggest takeaway was, especially when you're looking to teach with Minecraft, Minecraft, while nominally a game, is more of a toy. To draw this distinction, a game provides a goal to you. So if you're playing checkers, your goal is to remove your opponent's pieces to win the game. However, with a toy, you bring goals to the toy. So if I sit down with a pile of Legos, maybe I want to build like a cool rocket ship or a castle. Or when I was really young, I just wanted to see how Lego brick tastes. So when you're applying this to teaching with Minecraft, it's important to note that you're either competing against the software or you're working with it, because your educational goals have to be as or more interesting than the intrinsic goals it presents as a toy. And in an ideal situation, these goals are aligned.
We learned a number of lessons from all of our playtests throughout the semester that are valuable for anyone interested in teaching with Minecraft. The first is that both students and teachers have to engage with Minecraft to understand its world and its vocabulary. In our experience, it took about 15 to 30 minutes for students to really understand what was going on and acclimate to the lesson. And trying to introduce a lesson at the same time we introduced Minecraft was almost certain doom for the lesson we were trying to teach. It's also important to allow or even encourage play and exploration. Minecraft is a cooperative game, and it's a sandbox. Players can pool their resources together and build larger structures. So any kind of lesson that tries to limit this will also find limited success. As we found in our minecart race, we put students in small boxes and asked them to wait for their turn to participate. Students became disengaged and impatient while they were waiting for their turn. It also introduced a logistical nightmare. Because we separated the class into teams of 4, we had to put 3 students in each team into each of these boxes. And it took over half the class just to get this started, and we never really got to the lesson itself. In the contour line lesson, we playtested it twice. The first time, there was no competition, there was only one island, and students weren't really interested in tracing the contour lines. They wanted to either level the mountain or just build towers into the sky. So for our second lesson, we introduced a competitive element. We split the class into 2, teams of 10, and gave them each their own island. By doing this, the teams wanted to beat the other team, and they engaged far more, with both teams creating all of the contour lines. Also, teachers should not be afraid to lecture. In one of our lessons, Dave gave a statistics lesson while he was having students run around in a Minecraft world collecting data. Prior to the lesson, students only knew the word mean, and afterward, they were using the word histogram, variance, and outlier as they were conducting experiments and carrying out hypothesis testing. Teachers should also understand the tools that Minecraft DDU offers them. There are special blocks that can prevent or allow students to build in certain areas, or teachers can even place invisible walls that will prevent students from wandering away from the lesson itself. If the teachers don't understand this or explain it properly to the students will be confused. In one of our playtests, a student ran into an invisible wall for almost 30 seconds, even though the console was telling him he couldn't go there. One of us had to walk up to him and let him know that there was a wall there and he should return to the lesson. Minecraft also offers a host of additional features that aren't always necessary for lessons themselves. One such case is water, which is abundant in Minecraft. But in lessons, when students first encounter it, they're not quite sure what to do with it. They fall in, and because their Minecraft avatar sinks, they don't really know how to get out of the water. And this was really disruptive for the lesson itself. The same is true for lava. As soon as they stepped in it, their screen started burning, and it was really distressing because they didn't know what to do to make this stop. In our internal playtests and playtests with teachers, we also made sure to avoid disruptive elements such as bow and arrow, because when we introduced this to teachers, they only really wanted to shoot themselves in the face. They didn't really want to engage with the lesson itself. The same is true for TNT. When we introduced this, they only wanted to blow things up, and they didn't really want to engage with the lesson itself.
So looking forward, Minecraft DDU is looking to include our tools and lessons in the next possible version of Minecraft DDU that they're pushing. And our work in progress are going to be featured on the Minecraft DDU wiki. In addition, we'll also be publishing our work on workingexamples.org, and we will be featured in Institute of Plays Multimedia case study on game-based learning. And finally, we'll be submitting our progress to the following organizations. We'd like to extend a special thank you to the people at Elizabeth Forward School District, as well as our advisors and our client, Minecraft EDU. Thanks, and we're now open for questions.
So the quiz block, was the quiz block useful for letting you bring goals into the toy to improve the educational value of all of this?
Scott, you want to talk about that?
Yes, certainly, because I made a spatial reasoning quiz, and the whole lesson really evaluates how the students look at a three-dimensional object and count the blocks. But in order to know how many blocks they actually counted, the quiz box is actually really needed. And then after they enter the question, the teacher will be able to use the review tool to look at what answers they have answered and how they progresses throughout the whole lesson. So it definitely helps the lesson, the Minecraft EDU.
This is especially important for getting in-game feedback too. So, because students can walk up to the cubes and then write down how many they've seen, but unless they know they're doing it right and they don't get the feedback in game, they might be doing it wrong the whole time. So, in the case in Scott's lesson, for example, if they don't get the right number of blocks counted, it will tell them that that is the incorrect answer, and they will then maybe try to either retake the quiz or count it again to make sure what they did wrong.
And one more thing on the quiz block, the free-form input. Do you have a correct answer for that? Are you parsing free-form input?
Basically, right now, what the freeform input does is it takes the string, and I don't think there's any sort of comparison right now, so there's no correct answer. It's more so that the students can submit it, and then teachers can look at it later.
I was thinking about it. Is there a way to help the players find the quiz blocks? Because I can picture it being a problem of I've taken the lesson and I'm lost, right, in the 3D world. Is there a way to guide them or let you know, oh, by the way, you still have 5 quiz questions left in the world to complete?
So a lot of it comes down to level design, for one, because you need to be able to design the lesson so that the quiz blocks are easily visible. And this can also be solved by having quizzes be duplicates. So, for example, you can have multiple quiz blocks point to the same quiz. So just in case if a student walks by it the first time, they can go to a different quiz block and answer the same question. And the other thing that the quiz blocks has is they act as circuits. So in Minecraft, you can actually set up circuitry that opens and closes doors, and the door may not open until you answer the quiz. And so in that case, you can restrict where students go with the quiz blocks themselves.
Time for one more?
In the back?
Thank you. Can you talk about the enthusiasm of teachers, how they adopted this or plan to adopt it?
So, especially with Elizabeth Ford, where we play tested, and we have a couple guests from there today, they were incredibly enthusiastic, and they were probably the best play testers we could have ever asked for, because we play tested with them 8 times in a relatively short window. And they just kept on asking, when are you guys going to come back? So.
All right, cool. Okay.
Hello, we are MathLXP, and this is our finals presentation. So we're Phoenix Park, Dan Lin, Michael Lee, and our advisors are Jesse Sao and Ralph Tuccio. And we want to give a special thanks to Adam Letter, who's done music for us over the semester. So we're a student pitch project, and we've been rapid prototyping meaningful games. And so we've made 10 games over the semester. We've kept an active online presence, and we've really learned a lot about developing games and meaning. Okay, sorry. Okay, so some of our inspiration for the game, we were inspired by a lot of art games and indie games, and games that we thought were really meaningful to us, especially Braid, where the mechanic of manipulating time really contributes to the meaning of the game.
So at the start of our project, we had the goals of making games that were meaningful through gameplay, through their systems, mechanics, interactions. that they would be unreplicatable through any other medium. We want to explore approaches in making these meaningful games, and we also want to share our learnings with others to better benefit the greater development community. Unfortunately, we ran into a bit of a hurdle with that last bit of sharing our learning. We learned a lot throughout the semester, but we had a lot of trouble basing that new knowledge within the space of meaningful games, which was the space that we were trying to explore. This is in no small part due to the fact that meaning itself is very intangible. After all, what is meaning, and what is a meaningful game? These were more complex questions than we were willing to really admit. But it became apparent as the semester wore on that we were sidestepping some very vital aspects of meaning. We believe meaning that is all of this. One faculty member put it best when they said that meaning was the interface between events and interpretation. That is, meaning arises out of the intersection between objective reality and subjective perception. And it's that very subjectivity that leads to things like one person's idea of masculinity being the statue of David versus another person's idea of masculinity being best represented by American football. That being said, another person's ultimate meaningful art experience could be Citizen Kane, while another's could be Die Hard 2. Both are equally valid. If someone has a meaningful experience with Die Hard 2, you can't deny that Die Hard 2 is a little bit meaningful, at least to them. So what does all this have to do with our project? Well, ultimately the conclusion that we reached was that meaningful games was something that we couldn't really define. All art and all games are meaningful to some degree to some people. Just as there is no perfect game, there is no universally meaningful game for everyone. Personal interpretation is the ultimate deciding factor in whether something is meaningful, and not the work itself. It would be insincere of us to say that if you follow our development practices or follow our development findings, you'd make a more meaningful game. So we had to do a lot of soul searching. We went back and looked at a lot of the games that inspired us in the beginning, and a lot of these games are sort of universally hailed by the larger games community as really advancing the medium of games in terms of meaning. So clearly, these games that we were inspired by were doing something right, but what was it, and what did they possess, and was it more concrete than just simply being meaningful? Along with looking back at our previous inspirations, we also looked at prior research. Game scholar Ian Bogus was a huge influence on our project. In his book, How to Do Things with Video Games, Bogus outlines a game movement that he coins proceduralism. Proceduralist games actually was a good model fit for a lot of the games that we were inspired by. And unsurprisingly, a lot of the games that we made during the semester also fit this mold. So we decided to retool our learnings and apply them to this area of proceduralist games, a more precise frame for our research. And in doing so, we are exploring a expanding field of research, which is really exciting. But if meaningful games can't be defined, then how does Bogus define proceduralist games?
Thank you, Felix. So Bogus defines 5 common properties that he believes proceduralist games share. And so we'll quickly go through them. He believes that the games express themselves primarily through the interactions, the mechanics, and the systems inherent, the gameplay basically. They're expressive systems. He calls this property procedural rhetoric, which is actually a term that we used when we were first starting up our project. He also talks about these games not focusing on immediate gratification. Instead, they have longer-reaching goals, trying to inspire a bit of soul-searching in the player, a little bit of reflection. This property he calls introspection. He also says proceduralist games favor simple aesthetics. Basically, they don't focus on the narrative or the visuals. Instead, try to distill them down to best express the meaning of the game. He calls this property abstraction. The fourth property is that these systems typically represent something that they're not directly about. They're not simulations, but they're not completely abstract like Tetris. He calls this property subjective representation. Finally, he says that proceduralist games are really pursuing a truth the creator feels needs to be expressed above all else, regardless of sales or popularity. He calls this final property strong authorship. So now that we had a sense of where proceduralist games are, and we felt pretty confident that we were in this space when creating our games, we realized this could be a springboard for applying our experiences and our learnings throughout the semester. in the course of making 10 games, we learned a lot about what we felt made them better, made them stronger, both in terms of expressiveness and proceduralism. So let's now talk about some of the things we learned and some of the tips developers can use going forward.
Thank you, Mike. So first off, we think strong proceduralist games make the player's actions personal. So from a developer point of sense, we feel that it makes your game capable of different approaches. So Rod Hummel's The Marriage, the player can play through the system that sort of emulates the marriage, and they can play through different situations that can be expressed in the system that could represent different situations in the marriage. Emptiness, a game I developed, you sort of control these friends, and they can help you get through certain obstacles like blocks, or eventually you could even push them down holes, but the player also has a choice not to do that. The Path Taken is also a game that we developed over the semester, where we tried developing systems expressing the theme of regret. But then we ended up sort of designing for single instances. And because of that, the gameplay became very linear, and so the player could only really approach it from one way. We also feel that strong proceduralist games allow for personal connections. So in order to do this in a developer's point of sense, we have to be abstract enough for the player to project their own experiences. So in a game by Jason Rohrer, Passage, you play as a man sort of walking through life. And in this space, you eventually grow old and die. And the system there is abstract enough for the player to sort of project their own life experiences into the game. A similar game, Scott Told Himself, a game we developed, you sort of play as Scott in these everyday situations, and the player can sort of project themselves easily in this kind of everyday situations. However, because the game is about a young man sort of getting his confidence up to talk to a girl, it could alienate some players. These games also use subversion, particularly subversion at a singular moment. Revolutions, the first game we developed, focuses on this theme of competition, but in actuality, once they realize that they have to cooperate by combining, they begin to work together and sort of organize themselves and play the game differently after this moment of realization. A bad example we feel is Collect, another game we developed, where the game's mechanic is sort of collecting these trinkets, but because the player's actions are never really recontextualized, the player doesn't have a moment to really think about why he's doing it or what he's doing. The game basically just tells you.
Thank you, Dan. Strong proceduralist games also align their visuals and narrative with the message. Gameplay is still the most important part of expressiveness, but the visuals and narrative are almost in a sense inseparable in the best kinds of games. So the tip that we have for developers here is the visuals should really clarify. They should really be expressing whatever meaning you're trying to get through. Proteus by Ed Key is a great example of this. It's a game about exploration and discovery, and these simple childlike visuals really lend themselves towards encouraging players to explore this new world. Revolutions, the game that you briefly just saw, we feel is another good example of this, because even though it's presented initially as a racing game, the visuals are weird and abstract and make people realize something else is going on here and leaves them open to different possibilities. A great example of a bad example from our project is the game Exhaust. It's a game where you're driving endlessly, but the message is about letting go and how that can be a good thing. Unfortunately, letting go of a steering wheel while driving is typically not seen as a good thing by most people. So this really muddled the meaning of our game and made the meaning incomprehensible to most players. Strong proceduralist games also have strong connections between gameplay and message. But we like to go a little further than that with our tip and say the main mechanic should directly reflect the meaning. So a great example of this is Where's My Heart by Bernie Schellenberg, where it's a game about the complications of family life. And this is directly expressed because the environment itself is literally jumbled up, and you need to unjumble it, create a path for a family to move through. Emptiness, the game you also saw earlier by Dan, is a game where your friends, represented as blocks, are literally being pushed and controlled by you, which really gives a certain message of friendship in that game. A poor example of this from our project is Connections. It's a game ostensibly about the difficulties of maintaining a relationship over distance and time. However, the main way you form a relationship is by literally shooting attention bullets at a person, which is sort of a weird way of forming a connection. So it's an initial barrier that players had to get across in order to really understand the meaning of our game. Finally, or not finally, but another characteristic is they have strong convictions in their beliefs. And a great way of doing this is to develop from personal experience. After all, what can you believe in more than something you yourself have gone through? March, a game by Felix, is an example of this, where in the game March, it's about holding hands with a person and moving through a space together or separately. And Felix, while developing this game, drew from a past personal experience. And you could really tell that in every aspect, the narrative and the gameplay, that experience was being filtered through. So, and because he developed from personal experience, there's a real powerful resonance with it.
Another quality we found was that a lot of strong proceduralist games have elegance through their game, have elegance within their gameplay. We formulated this as using a single mechanic to express something as opposed to multiple mechanics to express bits and pieces. Today I Die by Daniel Benmergui is a great example of this. In Today I Die, the main mechanic is that you click and drag words around into and out of a poem. And what this expresses is that different perspectives, as represented by the words, can change the world around you. And it does this all through this very simple, elegant mechanic. Our game Get Closer by Mike also has a very simple mechanic in which it expresses the difficulties of getting closer to someone through the very simple mechanic of you controlling the character on the outside, trying to get to this character in the center. Again, it's very simple and very, very elegant. But the path taken, however, it's a very poor example of what is represented by this. Because in the path taken, we tried to spread the idea of regret over multiple mechanics. And while all the mechanics had a bit or aspect of regret, it ultimately was not as powerful together as a singular, stronger mechanic would have been. We believe that this is a very important quality because we feel that subtle works invite more introspection or thought than strictly blunt or didactic works. In Connections, the game you saw previously, we tried not to make connections overt in any way. In fact, the portrayal of relationships in Connections was, we tried to portray it in a way where you couldn't form any readily available conclusions. And we felt that this allowed for players to think about the relationships more inside the game. In Collect, the goal is to go around the level and collect these trinkets. And what's apparent about Collect is that the character at first starts off being very optimistic. He's very excited to collect these trinkets around. But the ultimate point of the game is that sort of senseless acquisition is very futile. And as the game goes on, the character gets more and more depressed and sort of more and more jaded. And that's represented, and it's represented very bluntly. And the final conclusion that the player reaches at the end of the game isn't something that they have to think about. It's just something they sort of agree or disagree with. Lastly, we like to talk about self-containment, as in making a complete experience within the game. With March, I took a lot of time on it because I wanted to portray this sort of experience in its whole entirety. If I had stopped development on it, or if I had stopped before I was completely satisfied with it, I feel like I would have been missing a lot of vital parts that would have otherwise sort of harmed the meaning of it. And because I spent a lot of time on it, because I worked until my personal satisfaction, it became a lot stronger experience for it. So with these calls of action, we hope to benefit the greater development community, and we hope to expound and detail them further as the days and weeks go on.
Thank you, Felix. To quickly wrap up, just going forward, we are planning on submitting an article detailing the things we've talked about today to Gamma Sutra for other developers. We're submitting to conferences and festivals like NDK. We're also planning on going, if you're interested in hearing more from us, we're going into greater detail in a 1-hour speaking session this Thursday. So please come if you're interested in hearing more about our project. We'd like to thank all these people for helping us, including our players, anyone who's played our game. Thank you very much. And thank you. We are now open for questions.
It seems like you spent a lot of time reaffirming other people's work with success or failure. What was your eureka moment this semester?
John's question was, what was our eureka moment this semester?
In a lot of senses, we had a lot of minor eureka moments. So I guess a big part of this is we were really struggling with finding the space in that we were really operating in. And that eureka moment, for better or for worse, didn't come until really, really late in the project. Earlier in the semester, we had a eureka moment when it came to development, where we realized that we were approaching development in a not necessarily a wrong way, but in a way that really wasn't getting to the core of what we were trying to express. And this is where actually one of our key points, developing personal experiences, came from. Earlier in the semester, we were developing more impersonal ideas, and then later on, and we feel this later on, starting with Emptiness and beyond, we really drew from our own personal experiences. And that, we feel our second half of games are much stronger than our first half of games as a result of that.
At the back, is that MK at the back?
Yes, it is. I noticed that you called each game by your name. This was Felix's game, or why was that? Did none of you contribute to all of them?
That was because actually our second patch of games, from Emptiness onwards, those were individual round games in which we sort of worked on them as individuals. Prior to that, all of our games were collaborative works.
And was there any pros or cons to changing that model?
A significant pro in changing that model to more individual games was that we felt like we were making stronger games just because we felt more comfortable in developing from personal experience. Like if I wanted to make a game, say about like the relationship between me and my father, and I sort of approached these guys and saying, hey guys, let's make a game all about me, it would have been it would have been a bit weirder. It would have been doable, but probably not as strong as if I had just worked on it myself. Sort of like kind of film auteur theory going on here.
A con of that, though, is in the later half of games, our games did take longer. We were initially going on a approximately 1 week schedule. In the second half, we came out with the same number of games. We had 5 games in the first half and 5 games in the second half. But those 5 games, since they're being developed simultaneously, took anywhere from a week to 3 weeks working individually.
So I want to get back to John's point. If you could show your list of points, was there this? At week 2 to now, would the list have changed?
The question is, if we start this list, if we had gone to week 2 and developed tips and looking now at these tips, would they have changed? And the answer is yes, very significantly actually. Initially when we started off, we approached it in, again, a very broad manner. It's like, how do we create meaning? In this sort of, in a sense, we were thinking, oh, we the designer can be responsible for laying down meaning and putting it directly into the brain of the player. However, as we learned, one of the humbling things about this project was like, meaning is very different to every person, which is great, but it's something we can't control for entirely. So our initial goals were our initial tips were very incredibly design-oriented, especially in the design of the game, in terms of mechanics and brainstorming. And as we've developed on, it's more about what are you trying to express? How do you get that expression out? How do you feel personally satisfied about it? And then if we believe if you create something personal and intimate, there will always be people who connect to that.
So because of points 6 and 9, does that mean a meaningful game can only be developed by one person?
The question is, can a meaningful game can only be developed by one person? And the answer is no. We don't believe necessarily a single person is necessary. A single authorship is necessary to develop a meaningful game. However, we believe that it helps incredibly if there's a single creative vision behind a game. Again, this is why we felt our individual games work so well, is because, a great thing about collaborations, you get the combined efforts of everyone in your team. But I think it's just inherent when you're collaborating, you're going to, like, again, Felix is mentioning, like, if he made a game about a relationship with his dad and his father, he has a very specific viewpoint on that. And naturally, if me or Dan had worked on it, our viewpoint would have been filtered through it in some level. And so sort of clarity of that message, we feel, would have gotten diluted to a certain extent. That's not to say that game wouldn't have been meaningful still, but it might have not have been as didactic or strong a message.
That's time. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, good afternoon. We're Team Action in Motion. I'm Paid, the producer and environment artist on the project. Patrick's our modeler and animator, and our programmers are Chen and Adam. So, the goal of the project is to create a hack and slash game demo for use with Microsoft Connect that also uses hybrid input. By hybrid input, we mean supplementing the existing motion control system that the Connect provides with an auxiliary input device. In our case, we're using the Z-Mode, which is a wireless Bluetooth joystick. We're trying to show that the nuanced control that is afforded by using the supplementary input can create a game that's appealing to a core gaming demographic, because current Connect games tend to be more casual. One of the problems that we're trying to address is that there are currently not really any hack and slash games on the Connect, because one-to-one motion control doesn't really work by itself for this sort of games. Navigation in 3D space is very difficult, and being able to position yourself is a core part of this sort of games. Most proven hack and slash game mechanics are designed for buttons, which are a discrete input device, and gestures, which is what the Connect reads, are not discrete. They're very ambiguous, and telling one person to do a horizontal swing of their arms could result from anything like this to like the wee waggle that you sometimes see. So, at the end of the semester, which is now, we have created a game demo that's 5 to 10 minutes of polished gameplay. It's a full level that has tutorials and satisfying combat mechanics and meaningful use of hybrid input. The demo is optimized for the ETC, and now we're going to run through the demo for you guys.
So our demo is around a 10-minute experience, so we'll be starting from the beginning with our revamped cutscene, but then skipping ahead to our later content. So we're having some audio artifacts, so we're going to skip ahead a little bit through the cutscene into the main intro. Yeah, we're going to restart this. Sorry about that. We're going to check the audio settings real quick. Very much apologies. No other things running. Skype. Close that down. Then. Sorry.
Must be the one.
Much better. Yep.
I've access to this week's schematics. Give this a try. To attack, first hold your right arm back. Keep your arm straight for maximum power. Now, you just performed a horizontal attack. Try an upward attack. Bring your arm back as before. Slash your arm upward. You can attack in any of the 4 directions. Bring your arm back in the direction of your choosing, and then slash across. The lab door is sealed. You'll need to cut the power cables by the door. Use the blade on the brig's right arm.
Okay, we're skipping ahead now.
You'll notice on the upper left of your screen, I enabled a diagnostic readout for the brig's structure structural details. Here we are. I need you to destroy all foreign data conduits in this room. I will then be able to infiltrate the facility's mainframe and assimilate its AI.
It's about as much time as we have for the demo.
But even to get the game to this point, we were focusing on getting some of the feedback from our softs implemented just in regards to the core gameplay mechanics. Hitting things in the softs build still felt weak, and people in large part thought that was because the camera was too distant and some of the enemy hit reactions were still too sluggish. We also had a number of good questions about exactly what was going to happen to the project after finals, and we'll be addressing that a little bit later on. We also had some questions about the difficulty level of the game, if there would be more than one, and how we would tune that for people that would be demoing it when the demo was actually put into the room. As of right now, we only have one difficulty level, but we will be, or we do have, some hotkeys for, we'll have some hotkeys for Steve to be using while the demo is running to toggle things like God mode and invincibility. And lastly, we had some questions about whether or not it was fun or would be fun. We had 5 playtests throughout the semester, and we felt that towards the end of that, we did approach fun, and that was confirmed during the BVW show when people in our core demographic were playing and enjoying the game.
So, since what we showed at HAPS, we've made a lot of technical progress. Some of the primary things were adding our interactive tutorial and essentially building up the skills that the player will need to play the game as they go through the game, as well as the new ranged enemy that you saw who fires shots at you and new behaviors for all the different enemies. We also added a very important feature that we found really helped players actually be able to navigate the game, where a button on our controller will let them lock onto an enemy so that the camera always focuses on them. It also let them circle strafe around so that they would always be able to sort of maintain what they would otherwise use the second analog stick for on a traditional controller, but just using our one-handed controller. As well as implementing sounds from our sound designer, doing an independent study with us, Eugene Kang, and all the audio features such as what you heard with the voiceover ducking some of the other audio so that it would be more audible.
On the art side of things, we've focused on getting the second half of the level fully completed and making sure that you can play through until the end of the game, so it's a complete experience at this point. We also went back and we retooled some of the visuals that we already had done once, but we wanted to do a second pass on just to make sure it was very clear from a gameplay perspective what these different things did, especially the claw. We found that even during the BVW show, a lot of our testers did not know that they had a claw, so we redesigned that weapon to make it very visibly a weapon. We also dramatically improved the enemy death effects,
implemented the remainder of our textures, and made a bunch of camera tweaks related to the feedback we got at Softs to really push the camera into the action and closer to the combat during the most important moments.
And throughout the semester, we had 5 official playtests, along with many other unofficial ones. And during the last 2 playtests, the players are really having fun with the game. And during the playtest, we really pay attention to what's making the player confused or frustrated. Then we noticed that many simple issues have potential to make the player very frustrated with the game. For example, during one of our playtests, our first combat playtest, where the player needs to move in the scene, the player started to notice that the slashes are very frustrating because not because they are not triggering, but because it's making the player go into a strafing mode where they can only move very slowly. So that is because the slashing was overriding the movement. And when we reverse that to have the movement override the slashing, the player no longer feels the slashing is a problem, and they are actually having fun attacking the enemies in the game.
Getting to this point, we learned a lot, not just over this semester, but transitioning this project from the fall semester, the first Action in Motion project, into this one. And we wanted to share some of those insights. Action games, especially games like this, depend on having a rock-solid inner loop. And all that really means is that unless the hitting the robots feels as good as possible, nothing else in the game is going to feel right, and no amount of polish will fix it unless the core is really there. And going hand in hand with that, until you get to the point where that inner loop of hitting things feels right, everything will feel broken. And don't get discouraged by that if you're ever working on a project like this. There's very little gray area where things feel almost right, and it will very frequently feel completely wrong until the last thing falls into place and it just works. And that's especially true when you're working with gestures and with motion control. We also found transitioning from a research-based project into a production-based project that you have to sacrifice not only some time for experimentation, but change your mindset a little bit. Because now you're going for making what you know is going to work and what is going to work the best and the most solid, and not necessarily have the opportunity to stop or change directions completely. But then on the other side of that, you can't lose sight of iteration, which is extremely important to making sure the final product is actually enjoyable to play.
So now that Action in Motion is made, and it's a complete experience from beginning to end that teaches the players how to play the game, as well as supports robustly different styles of motion that we've seen in our different playtesters, we think it's time to get some more eyes on the game. So at this point now, it's time for us to, we'll be sharing the game and as well as our promotional material that the ETC luckily has already asked us to provide, such as videos and website with Connect-specific sites and gaming opinion sites, as well as game creation communities. So it was really nice to see that most players were very excited when we got to demo it for the BBW show. So we're hoping that ETC, or people who come to visit the ETC, will continue to be able to have the experience of playing our game. We'll be handing off a demo with thorough documentation to Steve actually tomorrow. So we hope that more people will continue to be able to experience the game in the future. So thanks very much, especially those of you who have given us the opportunity to work on this over the past couple semesters. And we're open for questions.
Did you record any injuries as people were with their different gestures and?
We kept a tally.
Okay.
That's internal data. We got better as the semester went on.
Okay.
Well, there wasn't any real injuries. It was just the Zemo got flung around a lot. But for most of the playtests, we just attached like a wrist strap to it, so that kind of fixed most of our problems.
Generally, players haven't injured themselves, which is nice.
So you said it was optimized for the ETC. Is there another way to optimize it?
The question is, it's optimized for the ETC. Optimized in the sense that the hotkeys and everything there is meant. It's good to be able to have a demoer who can kind of see how somebody's doing and be able to adjust the difficulty, be able to show them the different sections and things like that, and also providing the documentation to show it to different types of audiences.
Back here, was there something extraordinarily interesting that you learned about gesture control in a game like this?
Was there something extraordinarily interesting that we learned about gesture control in a game like this? Extraordinarily interesting. Well, we found some fascinating things. The fundamental thing to consider is that, unlike with a controller, when you give players the ability to use any kind of motion that they're familiar with. They can do any motion, and players will do different motions because of that. So essentially, you're going to be looking at a lot of different thought patterns and a lot of different motion styles in many different players. So I think the big learning is essentially you're going to need to find a compromise that supports everybody, and especially for the ramping on experience for players who don't know what will do what. Those are the ones who are most easily lost right at the beginning.
During your demo, why was the cursor in the middle of the screen?
Ooh, during the demo, why was the cursor in the middle of the screen? Because I accidentally put it there. And because, actually, I think in an older version we had disabled the cursor, and you're right, it's sort of distracting not to disable the cursor. If that answers your question.
It does.
Okay. Mike?
So how many people were in your 5 official playtests, and did you find whether they used horizontal or vertical gestures more?
So how many people were in our playtests, the 5 official playtests, and did we find whether people used horizontal or vertical gestures more?
On average, we have about 8 to 10 testers per session. That's what we usually have. And during the playtest, we also found that, like, in terms of gestures, it really depends on like what kind of mindset the players come in with, because someone that has maybe seen some of the previous demos might do things a certain way, or people with like backgrounds in certain activities. For example, a playtester that we had has a lot of experience in boxing, and in martial arts you want to keep your opponent from being able to see what you do. And so you try to telegraph your moves as little as possible, but that causes a lot of problems for us to read it, because the Kinect also has trouble figuring out what they're doing until they've done it. So
also, generally, we would have small groups of playtesters and then call people back for unofficial playtests, because very quickly after we got people in front of it, and we would see 4 or 5 completely different methods of interacting with the Kinect, we would need to stop, and then that gave us more than enough that we had to go back and address. When you see something not work 4 or 5 times in a row and then realize that it's sort of it's a little bit random if you're going to just find the one person who intuitively wants to use the Kinect in the way that you've got the gestures tuned for right now. It's not going to be as useful to continue waiting to find those people when you know that you've got these other examples now to work with and to try and tune the gesture system for.
That's that.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Shenameo, and these are my teammates. We've got Zero as our producer, Mung is our modeler, and JJ, Sherry, and Albert are our programmers. And we are Team Factomo. So today I'm going to talk to you about, we're all going to talk to you about, a little bit about the background of the project, some of our client requests, as well as our lessons learned and how we got to what we did this semester. So, but first, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the project, Factoma is a collaborative effort between General Motors and the Entertainment Technology Center, where the primary goal is to increase assembly line efficiency. To do this, the client has outlined for us a number of audiences that we need to address. The first audience that will eventually, that the product will eventually work with are GM Zone engineers. For this group, the game needs to be complex enough to sort of resemble software that they're used to dealing with, and it needs to have all of the details from the real assembly process integrated into it. There are also some secondary audiences. The first secondary audience are GM Zone assembly line workers. These workers, the game needs to provide an avenue for them to be able to share their own daily work experience with upper management. An additional group are students about our own age. For this group, the idea would be to bring in them to share their ideas through crowdsourcing to address ideas and problems that occur within the assembly line. So in order to do this, the idea would be to create a serious game. This is what we've been commissioned to make, and the idea is to bridge between simulation software that's highly detail-oriented and a gaming environment which is more accessible and more fun to use. So this serious game would also then contain a number of factors that the player can manipulate. The first of which would be part installation order and dealing with what occurs at each individual assembly station, what people are doing. It also deals with how they're working, the positioning of their tools, ergonomics, and the worker position. And finally, it also looks at what's going on around the worker. There's the sounds of the factory, music that may be playing, and the temperature of the facility. However, this is a very large scope, so we had to narrow it down. And what we chose to tackle was a simplified plant assembly layout design task. So this centered on crowdsourced cooperation, in which many people are able to play off the same designs, working indirectly and asynchronously to improve on each other. We have 4 deliverables from this semester, the first of which is our Unity web player-based game that addresses that plant layout component. We have an online web page that handles user registration and account management. We've also produced a game design document and project history document, which outline fully what we've done this semester. And finally, we also have software documentation that will be used to hand off to a future team to make that transition as seamless as possible. There are 2 potential uses that we have established for this project. And the first of which is to determine whether or not a crowdsourced approach to dealing with assembly line layout is worthwhile and worth looking into further. Secondary to that, we also have a question of whether or not bridging the gap between simulation software and gaming is worthwhile. And finally, there's our client is looking to, or rather we've worked with our client to determine what they will need to do to achieve their goals and how we can continue to contribute to that. And now here will be Zero to talk to you about our progress since HAPS.
Thank you, Nick. So our team made great progress since the HAPS. The first thing we have been working on is the environment. We add textures to every single element in the world and also add human operators into the game. The 3D environment in this version seems more realistic and more attractive to the players. We also added a carefully designed UI. Because of the complexity of this game, a good design UI can greatly help people to understand our gameplay. Compared to the previous version, this UI seems more intuitive to the players and improve the feeling of the game. We also added a splash page to help people learn about our project, access the tutorial, load their previous designs, and load the best design in the server. And with this page, they can understand what they should do immediately once they log into the game. And now Albert will show you a quick demo.
Thank you, Zero.
By register our game on our website and use this information to log in our game. The Factomo is all about wisdom of the crowd. And what I want to show you next is creating your new design from scratch. First, we'll have the direction design sensors that the conveyors can follow. And to install parts in the proper order, you need to select one first. And on the right, you can see the information of the parts and the animation showing where the part is in the car. Now to balance your design on the current budget, you need to make a decision from 3 kinds of machines. They are all different in price, operating cost, time, and space. Rotate to fit and just build the machines, taking charge of the remaining parts. And you can save your game on our server whenever you want. And let's just finish our design. We are now ready to start our simulation and pause, stop. And you can also speed up your simulation using the 4 icons in the lower right corner. The simulation result is gaming out, from which you can see the figure here. Now I'm trying to beat that score. First, I'm gonna erase the old stuffs, and I wanna show you next is the multi-path strategy we have implemented after half. So building a wave first, and carefully select the machines. So let's take a look at what is going on from the first person view by clicking this button. Now running this new design, take a look at the top bar here. It will tell the little ENV icon will tell you the process of the simulation. And the story happening on this crossing sensor is it splits the conveyors into 2 directions. Thanks to the multipath, we are rewarded a double score. Our players, including me, are always keen on building the best design in the world. So let's just load it from our server and take a look at it. This amazing design is made by our client. And you see, the figure is much better than I. So, thank you. Now, Nick will talk about the playtest.
Thank you, Albert. So, we've had several opportunities this semester to playtest our product. These playtests have included our fellow ETC students, thank you very much, our GM clients themselves, as well as some recent CMU engineering graduates, and finally, BVW Festival VIPs just last week. So, overall, playtests have been positive and highly supportive. We found that our players told us that the game was challenging and requires a great deal of strategy, as well as what they enjoyed was the general freedom allowed in the game. You can place machines pretty much wherever you want. And in addition to that, they enjoyed the change view feature, which would let you walk around through the design that you just laid out. And this quote came from our client last week saying, "I'm having fun playing the game. You now have a new high score to beat." And that is the layout that Albert just showed you at the end. However, almost universally the feedback we got said that we needed to add a tutorial. And this tutorial system, which Sherry's going to talk to you about and get a little demo of in a minute, really got a lot of interest last week at the Spring Festival again, where we had a wide age group go through and play the game, and all of them were able to successfully complete the tutorial and then to begin to play the game. So we were very pleased with that. So, for Sherry.
Thank you, Nick. So we need a tutorial now. What kind of tutorial is good enough? We can use pictures or videos to teach players, but as we know, as one player playing a game, they will not spend too much time on videos or pictures, so we decided to make an interactive tutorial, which is hard to make but worth to do. Then let me show you a demo of this tutorial. First, we want to teach players how to use the eraser. To accomplish this, we pre-built some machines in this design area, waiting to be deleted, and we also use this big green arrow to indicate where to click. Once clicked, we have response from the mouse and the button, so player can get it and delete all the machines. Next, we want to teach players how to put the sensors. This is a complicated operation. Player need to first choose the direction, then click the confirm button. To make this clear, we use a lot of hints. We have 2 lines of words here. And we also have a highlighted section here to indicate where to put the sensors. If player click the confirm button first, then choose the direction, we will give them an arrow hint. Once player get all of this, we will have a put here to indicate where to put all these sensors. So because of we have all of these hints, most players can get this and do as we expected. Also, we want to make sure players know how to put the sensor in the corner, so we divide this assembly line into 3 steps. Player needs to first put the right directional sensors, then up directional sensors, and left directional sensors, so that player can understand how to put this sensor here. That's the first 2 parts of our tutorial. If you want to learn the whole tutorial, you can visit our website. Then Zero will talk about organization.
All right, thank you, Sherry. So our team consists of 1 designer, 3 programmers, 1 sound designer, and 1 artist. We made lots of effort at the very beginning of the semester to make sure everyone can contribute to this project. And here's our process. So from the beginning, everyone participated in the brainstorming part and helped the designer to refine an idea by quarters. Then we split our work and started working on different areas, from gameplay, server, to the art. And we finished a working prototype by halves and held a playtest session. Based on the feedback from the playtest, we keep polishing our game by adding new UI, finishing main gameplay, and finishing the server-side work. At the same time, we're working on our documentation. And after reviewing the game with the clients and the faculty during the soft open, we found that we need a tutorial badly. And then we used the rest of the time working on that point and finalize the project. And here's the achievement we have been made during the whole semester. First of all, we got a polished game which players can try it on the web browser. Then all the backend work to support the game runs on the server. A registration page to allow people to sign up their own account. All the original models which have already put into the game. A fully interactive tutorial to help people to learn our gameplay. All the sound work which has also been put into the game. A 51-page document describing the history, the continuation of this project, and what have been made. The software document describing all the assets which have been put into the Unity project. And a solution to bypass the firewall and let the engineer inside the general model to play our game. And we have learned a lot from this project. And so first of all, how to deal with the clients who are not gamers. We should realize in advance that they're not familiar with games and they might see the game differently because they came from different worlds. So what we should do is educate the client quickly and ascertain their requirements. Therefore, we can make sure what we are making is what they really want. And secondly, don't be afraid with a large scope. If the clients really ask us to do something beyond 1 semester's workload, and we should show the clients what we can do in that amount of time, and then try to narrow down the idea with them. As what Randy taught us in the last lecture, we should learn how to say no politely. So thank you for those who helped us during the whole semester, especially thanks for the playtesters who spend their precious time playing our game. If you are interested in our project, please visit our website and try the game on your own browser. Now we're open for the questions.
You said you marked sound as an achievement. What did you mean by that? Like, I didn't hear any sound there, so.
It's muted in the demo just so you can hear us talk. So, that is there. There's a background soundtrack. There's also machinery sound and alert noises.
Is the client planning to implement it or use it in any way?
Yeah, so right now they're planning on implementing it as a sort of small-scale playtest within their own group, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Who within a group are going to use this?
So their group is it's engineering for like 20 years from now, so it's their own engineers within that division.
So their engineers will be playing this game
and trying to determine whether or not it's worth pursuing that sort of bridge between simulation and gaming, and yeah.
Toby?
Yeah, actually, our outside feedback from some recent CMU engineering grads was actually pretty successful. They enjoyed playing it, and they could see how they could certain attributes were useful for their jobs or something that their company could implement. So, yep.
Are you going to beat the client's high score before the end of the week?
Come on. He did quite well, actually. Probably for sure. Yes.
Well, this was to me, it was a big challenge to try to create a game like this. What do you feel was your biggest accomplishment?
I'd say the biggest accomplishment was negotiating with our client something that everybody sort of agreed on. Like, at first they were a little, they wanted all this stuff, and we were really sort of blown out of the water by it, but we kind of kept going back and forth, and for a while it was a little bit of tense negotiation, but that all kind of smoothed out as we really started to produce. Anybody else? Anybody? Yes.
So how many registered users do you have, and do they come back and keep playing the game to try to improve the score?
It has, yeah. I mean, we haven't really published it publicly yet. I mean, it is online; anybody can play it, but we haven't really looked to see if random people are checking it out. But.
Time for one more. All right, thanks. Congratulations to the 5 teams today. 10 more. Good job, everyone. The faculty, let's go upstairs.
We usually send us an email and then we can see if they're around. Okay. No problem. Okay. Usually it's an email, just and if they're around. They'll probably not be. Yeah. That's just a lovable person. Yeah. I've got to make kids and make. Alright, good job. We usually hold grades till the end of the week too. Sorry, I'm on my desk, yeah.